All right. We're a little bit late. We're a little bit late. Don't blame me. It's totally my fault. It's totally my fault. Oh, a dozen different things I was trying to get off the ground at the same time, and some of which I'm going to have to work on in the background. But the show is ready, right? The show is ready. We've thought about this. We debated it, thought about it in our head again and again. What's the usefulness of this topic for Monday Mondays? And yes, it is Monday Monday. So thank you for guys that are showing up here and those of you that catch on a replay game. Sometimes some of you outside of this that don't jump in the chat, let me know, hey, yeah, I caught some of the show, and that means the absolute world to me. I do what I can to sort of try and promote these things. Admittedly, not the best, right? And admittedly, not the best, but what we're trying to do is find a way where we can have these conversations where we're giving back, where there's a back and forth, where you feel like I get some value from some of these segments that we're doing, that we're putting together. I think that's, ends up being so like kind of just critical. Give me one sec. It always jumps back with some of these errors. I got to look into that later. I have no clue why YouTube is mad. But if you guys are streaming and you see this just fine, just let me know that it's fine, and then I can ignore some of these other warnings, and we can just keep pushing on. Besides that, I'm trying to make sure my chat, you guys are popping up here. So I'm going to pretend like YouTube is not throwing up a bunch of hazards for me, that something is wrong, and we'll just keep pushing on. Someone remind me to check on the viability of this thing later on. But more importantly, one of the topics that we keep coming back to, and we'll keep coming back to, is retirement. I don't think there's a lot of things that are sad in this world, a lot of things that are awful. One of those is seeing like the elderly forced to continue to work. I think that even if we go about and doing things the right way, the proper way, at some point in time, you should be rewarded with being able to, relax. Hey, you should be at some point in time being able to just say, hey, I can stop, I can relax. I've earned this. I've put in this amount of work. And at this point in my life, I get to chill. That's what I'm thinking, right? That's what I'm thinking. But besides that, what do we do so we don't fall into that trap? And one of the errors is, it's once you fall into that, this is the quicksand that we used to see all the time when we were little on cartoons, that we thought was going to be ever-present problem every time we just got up and went outside. We thought quicksand was going to be a real issue in our lives, and we don't really encounter it. We don't really run across quicksand until you do, until what it doesn't seem like it. What I mean by this, by the time you're in a jam in terms of retirement, by the time it's time for you to look up and say, damn, I should do something, I'm 55. It may be too late, even if you have a high salary, even if you're doing well, even if you've done well and you're making 180K. Yeah, it may be too late by the time you're forced to go out and then looking at what you actually have. Sure, now we call this the catch-up time, the catch-up era, but part of the issue is what we're gonna, some terms we're gonna talk about, is your burn rate, right? And what does that mean? That means how much you're spending every single month before you even spend other things. These are the things that are already accounted for. They have to be spent, they have to go. These are your mortgage, your rent. These have to be paid. Now, maybe you have, cars that you have to pay those. Insurance has to be paid. Medical insurance has to be paid. These are your burn rate. Then you look and start talking about your actual finances and what you need to actually live, burn rate. Any other obligations that you have every month, burn rate. These become problematic when they become higher and higher and higher and higher. How are you supposed to make this sort of thing happen when most of your money is already being siphoned away before you have a chance to look and play with it? Yeah, burn rate is what you have to, your cost of actually living. Not the nations, not the states, your cost. What it actually costs you to live, and that's what you're going to have to look and play with when it comes down to your retirement. This is what your number needs to be, at least just to break even. And we don't want to put you in a position where you're simply breaking even. We want to look and say, what steps can I take right now, or what pitfalls can I avoid, i.e. the quicksand once again, so I don't find myself in such a state where I've got to worry about this and see, well, how do I make this work? How am I supposed to live in sort of this in this plan? That's not where we want to be. We want to make sure that most of us, all of us who are in positions that can do something about this, that we start early. So besides that, thank you guys, those that showed up for Subscriber Sundays yesterday. Shout out to you guys. Again, I thank you for your attention. It makes this thing fun rather than, I know it's the same where I'm talking into the camera. I'm talking into the camera, but seeing the interaction in the chat is always helpful to sort of reaffirm that what we're doing here is actually making sense that people are talking. So with that being said, there's going to be, and again, if you are new here, double tap the screen, subscribe to the channel. Let me hit my little graphic. Oh, so of course it's not working. Dante, great to see you. What are we doing? We're talking about money. It's Monday, right? We have three different segments, three different live streams that we run, try to run every week. One of them is Money Mondays, where we talk about financial issues that may affect you down the line, or you wish you sort of knew about before, and bigger topics. Sometimes we talked about, did we talk about ETFs and investing? We might do that next week, right? Where we go a little hands-on on things that we like to do. What I'm personally doing. You could do what you want, right? you can absolutely do what you want. What we're doing here is giving you examples of what makes sense. Can't really see it, but there you go, right there, right? I'm into real estate. It's one of the things, but it's the most of my portfolio is made up of real estate, buy and holds, rentals. But there's other aspects, other things that I do, so I can have a more robust looking portfolio when it comes down to actually retire. Yeah. So if you are new here, again, hello. Double tap the screen, and yeah, someone remind me set up the hotkey for my subscriber later. I got to keep doing it like this. But we're gonna get into it. And again, if you have any questions, we have no problem getting sidetracked to stop and talk about some of these things. If you have something to add, something that's pertinent, please feel free. Besides that, we're going to talk about 4 of the main financial threats, especially when we said for men, but this also applies for women when you get older. There's what we're going to call the status tax, the timing ambush, the family triple hit, and then of course the fee drain. So what we put up in the chat is we want to know what worries you most about retirement. Is it not having enough savings, high expenses, healthcare, or supporting family? There's a lot of people find themselves in that position where, depending when your parents had you, when you had your kids, you could be in that sweet spot of danger where I've got to support them and I've got to support them. But first, we're going to start with the status tax, right? And this is what we already talked about. We started talking about the burn rate, the amount your household must spend each month before you can start saying, let me get these, let me enjoy this Netflix. Let me enjoy, hey, we want to go out and have some fun. Before you get to do the celebratory discretionary things, that's what your burn rate is. Listen, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. We're trying to help each other out. There's things that I'm versed in, and there's areas where I'm kind of good enough in, and I'm always looking to see more angles so we can actually improve. All this may be redundant to you. All this may be redundant to you, and you're simply here because you want to support, and I appreciate that. But you may know someone that says, hey, this may be worth it on Mondays. You can talk about these things. You can also get in contact with me about if there's something specifically that you want to know, you want to talk about, we can talk about those as well. But burn, right? Your burn rate. So these things can include your mortgage payments. Right? And remember, sometimes you got to be careful when we talk about mortgage payments. Sometimes we're also talking people leaving out your taxes and your insurance, depending if you're an escrow type of person. I'm an escrow type of person. But property taxes, car payments, your insurance, tuition, child support or alimony. If you're part of some sort of club, that may be, if you're part of some country club, these dues come out automatically. You may have a vacation property. You may have, remember, this is someone that you've done well. We're saying you've done well. We can take it 2 different scenarios. One where you've done well, one you haven't. May have personal loans. You have credit card, your minimum debt payments that have to be paid every month. For those of you that are a fan of the Amex, you understand it. Pay that thing in full. Pay that thing in full. I like my Amex cards, right? I do pay that goddamn thing in full. To me, there's no set due date. If I'm bored, if I'm sitting down scrolling on TikTok, I'll say, wait, let me check what the balances are. Let me go and let me knock all these out during the month, whatever. I never just want to come up and say, damn, I can't pay enough. I got to carry this over. And this way, I'm always a fan of keeping a close eye on your finances. You never want to be shocked when you go there and say, when did this happen? I didn't do it. Because Amex is going to say, you absolutely did. You absolutely did. Pay me my money right now. So pay it, right? So we said minimum debt payments, daily subscriptions and services, your financial support for relatives. So one of the things where I often, I'll give you an example of this, but first we have this question, can I afford the payment? This ends up being what we say to each other when we're trying to make sense of, hey, I want a Porsche 911, right? Turbo. Can I afford the payments is what I ask myself. Let's say you put down a hefty amount. Let's say you're financing it and you're somewhere $2,000 to $3,000 a month. Do I have the space for that in my budget? Yeah, I do. Should you? Well, no. No, that's why I don't have the car right now, because that's not what is in the budget. If I'm asking myself, can I afford it? Yes, that means I get the thing. But how quickly do you find yourself in that trouble? I say this like when we're talking about when people say they buy a house versus now I'm going to turn it into a rental. Well, again, this is my bread and butter. Part of the error that happens here is when we talk about getting a rental property, you're looking to see not how much can I afford. You're looking at it, say, in terms of maybe cash flow, in terms of appreciation. You have a different mentality that you're using in which you're trying to determine whether this thing makes sense or not. When you're buying a house, you're saying, how much can I afford? How much house can I get for this amount of money? You're not thinking later on, I'm going to turn this around in order to make this sort of, it's very hard sometimes for you to clear that distance. You bought this place to raise yourself and your family, to build memories. You buy the investment property because you may never sleep in any one of those apartments. You may never sleep in any one of those rooms. It's simply to turn a profit for you. Very different set of mentality. What we end up failing, where we end up going wrong, is we often will use one mentality over the other. How much can I afford? Rather than asking yourself, playing it down the line. Is this a good purchase? Is this going to help me get there? We can ask better questions rather than how much can I afford. You can say, what percentage of my income is already committed? When you start looking at your income down to percentage and say, and you'll see 85% of my income is already committed to everything that I've got going on. That leaves you 15% to do what? Buy groceries? To help yourself retire? These are questions you have to say. I need to do some work. So if you look at this and say, if I'm going to buy a house or I'm going to rent something, how much of my actual monthly income is tied up? Is it 25%? Is it 55%? And remember, if you're going to do the mortgage thing, this is the 30-year commitment that you're making. If you're renting something, that if you got a bad property, you're in a bad lease, lease is for a year, or you can break it. And you can pay the penalty, but you can see the timeline where that ends. When you buy a bad house, i.e. it costs too much insurance, your interest rate is too high, you've signed up for a 30-year or several years of bad credit in order for you to extricate yourself from that. So one of the things we can ask ourselves is also, how easily can I eliminate this expense? If you have Netflix, that's no problem. That's no problem. Netflix doesn't make it hard for you. Not like Planet Fitness when you're trying to, get rid of your membership. They make it extremely difficult. You got to show up. You got to write to us. You got to send us. So if you have an expense that you can eliminate easily, then this is where you want to start making some of these decisions. And of course, what happens if your income fails? What happens to these expenses when your income fails? Given a personal example, one of the cars that I really enjoy is the Audi R8. First saw it in Ironman, right? Years ago. I was like, what is that? what is that? That was me. I was like, Jesus, gorgeous. I didn't have the money at the time to do it. And then I knew committing, if and when I put the money together to buy something like this, the issue now becomes, if I lose this job, do I lose this vehicle? Yeah, that would be the case. That would be the case for most of the things that you have set up. Your income lose these things down. If you were to lose your job, how many things would you have to get rid of? Get rid of. I'm not talking about your emergency fund. How many of these things would immediately be on a chopping block? I'm hoping Netflix would be one of them. You don't have a job, but your job can't be now to sit back home and actually sit down and watch Netflix. That can't be the move. So if your vehicle that you love, that you enjoy so much, if that is now caught up in, if I cannot afford this, if I lose my job, this has to go, then you can't buy it. What I did, right, again, real estate, I bought a 5-unit apartment, and the cash flow for that paid that car. So even if I lost my job, I did not have to give up the car. I absolutely would, but I didn't have to. This provides you a peace of mind. This frees up your actual W-2 income. I'm one of the proponents of you might as well work both. Right? I never wanted to become an entrepreneur to remove myself from the workforce. Maybe I'm just greedy. Maybe I wanted to double dip. I thought you could go farther doing that. You can affect more lives. You're tired all the time. But I think what it allows you to do, the wealth of experience you get, is worth it. And then if you stick with it long enough, by the time you breathe, look up, it's time for retirement. And you can look and say, okay, I'm glad I have these options rather than not. That's a position that I'm walking myself down. So we just use an example. Assume a man earns 190,000, right? Lucky bloke, right? His actual take home pay will depend on state taxes, how he's filing. Is he married? Is he single? His retirement contributions, how much is he putting into his retirement every paycheck, his health insurance, and other payroll deductions. So suppose he brings down 10.5 every month. That's his bread. His obligations could include, say, your mortgage and property taxes. Let's call that $3,400. 2 vehicles, right? 2 vehicles, right? That's a monthly payment about $1,800. The average vehicle price is about $750 right now. And it's just ridiculous. But private school tuition, because he makes $190. Private schools, it's got to be there. $3,000. Insurance, $1,100. Then the vacation, property, and a boat. Again, I'm making $190. I need a vacation boat, right? $1,500. Membership and other dues and other places he may, maybe he's an Equinox type of guy, $700. His total fixed obligations is $11,500. Remember, he makes $10,500, right? So you're already short. But now we had said nothing about food, gas, clothing, entertainment, travel, home repairs, nothing about that. How do you get into these positions? Well, you end up living on the margins. You end up living right on your credit cards or in credit card debt, building up that credit card debt. What it allows you to do is take some of those expenses and just kind of put it elsewhere. If I bought, say, I'm losing $1,000 a month, but I carry $3,000 of that forward towards the next month. What it feels like I ended the month safely. In reality, no, you just carry that sort of debt burden forward. So you go from the average commercial debt being something like $7,000, $7,500 for every American, to now you end up one of these people on TikTok talking about, I owe 6 figures I'm 6 figures in debt. And you're just like me. You're thinking, how much of this is student loans? I'd be like 18,000. Okay. Okay. These are the sneaky, subtle ways that you find yourself in these positions where you owe way more than you ever thought you would. It doesn't feel like you're overdrafting your monthly budget because credit cards allow you to sort of massage a lot of that out. So it's you're like it's a structural sort of deficit. It's not just overspending. So you can't budget your way out of obligations. right? That you already exceeded your income. If you already have to pay more than you're making in, I don't care what type of budget you have, you're always going to come up in that deficit, in the red. So you have to remove the obligation. Sometimes we're too nice. Sometimes we subsidize people's lives, the family members, that they're on down on a luck, but it puts you in the red every single month. They need that. They're living great because you're a largesse. But if you can't take care of yourself, you end up in that old idiom: you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you would take, say, in this case, you would take some of that obligation, remove it, eliminate it. Say that second car. Now you free up something at $800. Now you can start approaching where you need to be. If you can free up $800, you can invest that. Think about that. If you're investing monthly, $800 monthly from 40 years old, right? 41 to 65, at about a 7% rate of return, you'll have $650,000 by the time you're 65. Most people, right? And I know when we hear that, oh, it doesn't sound like enough. Most people at that age of retirement, around 65, on average, have about $250,000 saved for retirement in their 401k. We may be a very rich nation, but a lot of us aren't doing that well. When you look at the average, and you have to consider how much that people end up pulling the average upwards. When people are there involved, when you say the billionaires and the millionaires and the trillionaires, and the people that look just like you, but you would never guess they were that wealthy, they're pulling it up and away. So in reality, what happens? You think you're doing well. You think you're doing average until you take a look and see what the average actually is. Now you should be concerned. Now it's something that we should, be upstairs, up in arms about. So the question is, you have to look at, what monthly obligation for you would be the hardest to eliminate. I think for a lot of us, we have this idea of status. So we don't want to get rid of the car that already costs too much. We don't want to find ourselves in the position where we're not, playing out to our best abilities. We like to look good for other people. For me, only have one car note at this point. I think the hardest thing to eliminate would be six. Yeah, can go far if you decide to retire. That becomes less and less of a should you, and you do it, right? Do it. Especially some of these other countries look completely like attractive. If you can spend $2,000 a month and have everything you need from rent to food to entertainment, I came across this other person's page, and they were highlighting just what it would cost, or what you need invested, so you can get a monthly return to cover your living expenses. No place was over $650,000. I think they looked at Thailand, they looked at Cambodia, I think they looked at Colombia, Philippines, Vietnam. None of them. Yeah, if you needed, that would be your retirement right there. You could just set that aside, take that what you get from, take 4% of that, and you'd be good. And you would be absolutely good. So it becomes a question like, maybe I can't do it, right? Maybe you can't do it. So the timing ambush. This is what when you find yourself at 50, right? Specifically for men, because the data backed this up. Anything else, if I say this for women, that may be a little misconstrued. But 45 to like 50-ish, that's when men hit their financial stride, where you're making the most money you've ever made in your life. But because of things like lifestyle creep, it doesn't feel like it. You probably still feel the same when you can shave off $100,000 from that salary. When you make it 90, you probably felt the same way you feel right now. That's because, well, there's a sort of lifestyle creep that keeps that feeling. Hey, you made a little more money, so you spent a little more money. So you're still in that equilibrium. But one of the things we want to talk about here is the sequence of returns, like risk. So essentially, you're chilling. right? You've got your money in your portfolio. You have good years, you have some bad years. But on average, inflation adjusted, you're supposed to be around 7-8%. That's the thought, right? So if you take it, retiree A retires whenever they do. Say you retire today, and then you get a good few years, and your money is still sitting in your retirement. It's doing well now for you. So you went from maybe having 500, now you have 6. Now you have 7, maybe you're at that, $750,000. It feels good. Retiree B starts maybe 5 years before you, and he hits several bad years. Retiree A can still take out that 4% and be fine. His portfolio is still doing well. Retiree B takes that money out. You locked in a loss. So what you say, whenever you look at the stock market, the minute you sell, you locked in either a profit or a loss, rather than you just let it ride over time. This is why most of the things I recommend when it comes down to stocks is a very broad set it and forget it. Here, dollar cost average, I'm going to invest $2,000 into the stock market every single month. Okay, I'm not trying to time it. I'm not trying to look and say this is a better day. This is what I need to put away. Set it, forget it, stop looking at it. Pay attention over time, but even when the market turns, you just keep doing it. On average, you're going to do well. You're going to do better, rather than trying to time it, rather than taking on a second or third job, because that's how much you have to be in tune with it in order to make this thing happen, in order to make this thing work. No. So, but when you end up selling, the market takes a dip. You panic, you sell. What happens? You've locked in that loss. You bought at 100, it dipped to 50, you sold at 50, you locked in that 50 that you lost. Because panic, because you say, I'm retired, I can't afford to not have this. This is one of the things that we have to understand when it comes down to retirement. This is when you actually have to exercise way more patience, way more patience. This is why you want several different avenues, several different ways for you to be able to retire. So the market recovers as it has done, as it statistically has done forever and ever and ever. But the shares, you already sold them, you lost them, right? You're gone. That's gone. So in your 50s, we saw why this matters, right? You should begin preparing for the risk, considering that you may have, several years of accessible reserves. You want to have that cash stashed somewhere. You want to have it in a bank, in a high yield, in a CD. You can have it. I want to do treasury bonds, T-bills, but you just want to be able to reach out and touch it. You want to be upset. You want to lament that, oh my God, it could be in the market making me more money. This is for when the market decides, hey, I'm not going to produce for you right now. You want to have diversified stocks and bonds. You want to have flexible, retirement spending. Sometimes you can look at the market, and if it's looking like we're going to be down, we're going to take a few, we're in a bear market, maybe you can delay retirement. Maybe you can say, I'm going to sit this way out. Wait until this downturn is about to ease back in the right direction. Then I can go ahead and consider that. So very early on, you want to avoid any excessive withdrawals. You have to prepare yourself for that retirement platform, what it actually looks like. Then of course if you can have other sources of income during that retirement period, that's where you want to find yourself. This is a safe space where you can say, okay, I'm getting paid from this source, from this source. Those of you that, have the fortunate ability to have a 401k and a pension, the two disparate sources where, okay, pension's going to pay you this all the time. Then you can have this. Then you may even have Social Security as well. So at this point, you find yourself in a perfect position where you say, okay, things may be wrong, things may be awful, but at least I can still weather this storm. You may want to feel like I'm rich. I made more money in retirement than I ever did before. This is time for you to get pragmatic, to get smart, especially if you started late in the game. So one of the big problems we talked about is when you end up being the caregiver. When you were the responsible one, right? You were the genius millennial and you said, I know more about money than my parents did. So you started making the right moves. Well, your parents will say, I'm so happy and so thankful that you were able to do that. But I got expensive. You got a home health aid for your mom. Maybe you have your mom in assisted living, transportation, medical equipment, home modifications because, they can't do 2 stories anymore. Then there's medicines, prescription costs. Then, if there's any legal issues for the estate, these things actually add up. So you sometimes, and unfortunately, when you see, if you're any fans of like Caleb Hammer's finance show, or what used to be finance show, now it's like Jerry Springer with money. One of the things people often think their kids are going to be the retirement plan. My kids are going to take care of me. So they don't really do much when it comes down to their finances. They don't really take the time to say, this is a plan. Here's my will. Here's how I plan on pushing myself further. Especially when your kids are young and you're betting on them being scholars, athletes, or geniuses, and they turn out to just be trash. They turn out to be trash. By now, it's too late to turn around and say, listen, I need to have a better plan here. Part of that, where you find yourself in this unique position, now you have adult children. They're in some dire financial straits. They're looking, especially if you paid attention to Gen Z or maybe even some younger millennials, where they're moving right back in with their parents. You need help with college, with graduate school, housing, cars, weddings, health insurance, credit card emergencies, down payments for house, car. They look to you and say, it's your job, especially if your kid's very entitled. Your kid's very entitled. So now you're looking and saying, I've got to finance my kid's life. Then I've got to, finance my parents' life. But it's all because now it's all on your back. You have to sacrifice. You have to put this all on your back to say, I'm sacrificing the end of my life and what that looks like so I can give you a leg up now. And the world to say, you're supposed to do that, you're a parent. Children, sometimes they have decades, right? If you just pay attention to it, they have decades to figure this thing out. When we're looking at, just say, college, a lot of the times we'll say, I want to pay for my kids' college. Cool, admirable, altruistic even. You want to give them a better leg up. Get that. You have to have a clear eye on your finances, because you think that if I'm doing this, it's going to be financially advantageous for them. But what ends up happening, you put yourself in dire straits. And then what are you going to do? The same thing your parents did. You're going to go to your kid and say, I need you to support. I need your help to pay for this. Otherwise, I'll be on the street. The cycle continues. I know it sounds good, but realistically, that's not accurate. So, triple threat. Next one is divorce. Great divorce. So divorce among adults over 50 rose sharply from 1990 through 2010 and kind of remains around the same right now. So at 55, right, if you divorce in 30s and 40s, you can recover. Right? You can get serious, you can double down, and you can still recover. You can recover from that hit. But at 55, that's a different story. I know a couple of coworkers who were retiring, put in their paperwork to retire, and then boom, wife came back home. Wife said, "Oh, great, finally, I want a divorce." So that's your pension, that's your retirement, that's all up in flames. And you had to be the macho man, so she never worked. Right? So that is essentially alimony for life, because by the time you're done, you'll both be dead. So what ends up happening, you divide your retirement savings or the retirement accounts. Might have to sell the family home, maintaining 2 households, buying, paying for legal fees. You got to look at Social Security and reassess what that means. If you were on her health insurance, that's gone. Now you have to delay retirement. If you waited to the absolute last minute and there is no delay available, you have to go back and work. Now you have to go back and try to rebuild your savings, but it took you 30 years to get there. It took one divorce to nuke that thing, depending on how things played out, depending on the state. So this becomes one of the one of the financial sort of pitfalls. And there's nothing, and there's some of these other things, the first 2 that we named, these are things that you could take care of, right? But yeah, my kids would take care of me when I'm old. Yeah, I never got it. never got it. It's a blessing if they're able to. But why would you want to put that financial strain on them when they're trying to make it in their life? Don't get me wrong. I like if I can help, I want to help. You know, my mom is very cognizant and very thankful. You know, if I do anything for her financially, she's always saying, thank you. And may God replenish your pockets. But I worked hard, and I have worked hard to put myself in a position where it's not just me that's going to benefit from it. It's going to be the rest of my family. I don't want them to ever feel they're in a position that is something that they truly need, and then they have to sort of mortgage how they go about getting it. You want new shoes? All right, yeah, cool, whatever. But hey, I don't want you to feel like we have to choose between having this operation or kind of rolling the dice with our lives. I don't ever want them to be in that position. And, you know, thankfully, my brother, you know, he's doing phenomenally well. He's going to be doing, I can't wait for him to eclipse me. And then we can be, right, like the Mario brothers, like the, you know, we're just helping each other out, taking this game to new heights. That's always been the plan. It's always been the plan. To me, there's no reason for you to be the sole wealthy person. You made it big. You're rich in your family and no one else. You ignore their plight. They don't need anything from you, or you ignore that they may need something. You just look at them and say, get it together. That's just not how we were raised. I'm always looking to see what can we do? What can we add? How we can get this thing together? But we're talking about the one of the last traps is going to be the fee drain, right? This fee drain. This for people that, you know, you did the right thing. You invested. You put your money into account. You listened to what your accountant said, right? Or your financial advisor said, but he needs a little bit off the top, right? He needs a little bit off the top. That's got to go somewhere. So let's say you started with a portfolio. You're starting a portfolio 600,000. Gross annual return is 7% over 15 years. Under a simplified sort of just calculation, if you compare that with someone has your cost of your portfolio is 1.2% versus someone's 0.03. Traditionally, the higher percentage is what you would pay to an advisor, someone that's taking your money and putting it in the market because of their expertise. Well, that needs a fee. Depending on where you go, depending on the amount, well, let's call it 1.2% versus you investing yourself. You're putting your money where someone else would actually put it themselves. That cost could be as low as 0.03. We're talking over 15 years. The difference between that, and you do this by, this is something like the cost of stocks itself or the ETF itself, right? This is that cost we're talking about, 0.03. When you go to some of the financial advisors, what they'll do is they'll take your money and put it in the very same things you could do on yourself. They just have the expertise to do it, quote unquote, the expertise, the knowledge to do these things. You're thinking out of fear, well, I don't know what to do with my money. I'm so afraid of losing it. So let me put the decision in someone else's hands. They're experts. They should know what to do until you look up and say about 75% of day traders don't perform better than the S&P 500. It just feels good, right? It sounds good if I give it to you and you're supposed to do something with this. Reality comes different. But we're saying this over time, over 15 years, you started with $600,000. How much you end up paying to that advisor? $250,000. $250,000 goes to that advisor. And listen, I'm not knocking it. If you can find an advisor that actually beats the market, yeah, it may be worth it. You have to sit down and do the math. But if he's and this is a good deal. It's a good deal for for advisor, especially if he holds most of what happens when you have a portfolio. When you start off with $600,000, when you start off with that amount, what truly ends up happening is a lot of nothing. That is such a large amount that even the money that you could relatively from a relatively normal income or not or abnormal income, say you're the $190,000 dude. Say you're putting in $2,000 a month, and I know I'm throwing numbers at you, but follow along. That's $24,000 a year. What your portfolio makes on its own without you contributing, that $24,000 is such a small number at that point. When you give your money to an advisor, you think he's watching the market, he's watching how the day trades, the futures are going. I'm going to take this money, let me dump it all over here at the same time. Let me take a little bit. No, a lot of that's just like, I've got that there. I can sit and wait. I sit and wait. A lot of these things end up when we're essentially siphoning money from your pocket because, well, this is the way we've always done it. But there's other ways your advisor could be valuable. I don't want people coming here and say, Easy said get rid of advisor, right? I didn't. So there's other ways, tax planning, right? They can sit there and lay out, hey, you have to spend this amount in this category, or if you want these type of specialized deductions, you need to qualify this. This is how you can qualify. Or even better, say, hey, don't do that. The IRS is coming. Don't do that. I know you thought you could do that. That's not how it works. A lot of stuff you end up looking and hearing about sort of these hood tactics. There was the one about if you buy a vehicle over, was it 6,000 pounds, you could write off the expense. No, you can't write off the full expense of your Hummer that you bought or the G-Wagon you bought. Don't do that, right? Don't do that. Don't take your advice of what you hear about stuff you could do with tax planning, tax strategy from a guy on TikTok. Don't, please don't do that. But other things your advisor could do for you, they could help you with your retirement and your income planning. They could lay it out and say this and this and this and this. This is what you're looking at. They could look at, say, you one of these people that has multiple pieces of property. They could do the estate planning for you. Some can actually help you get rid of some of these habits that keep you spending your money every single month. People that can help you prevent you from making $10,000, $500,000, $500 a month, and you're spending $14,000. Sometimes you need to be coached into these strategies that say, hey, this is what is effing you in the A. These behaviors right here. This is what you can do to sort of go on this side. There's insurance analysis, the Social Security planning. There's a Roth conversion analysis. If you have a traditional 401k, you might want to convert it to a Roth for the tax benefits. But that's what someone there can do for you. And then any type of business, transition that you can do. But primarily when it comes down to your money, what they do, they select basic funds, they rebalance occasionally, and they send you a quarterly report. So for a little bit of work throughout the year, in 15 years, you'll pay them $250,000, right? Saying you started with 600,000, but this amount of work that you can do for multiple clients, this is how you end up independently wealthy from managing other people's money. So there's some things that you can always ask your advisor. You could look and say, what is your total annual cost in dollars? Is there an advisory fee? What type of funds they're going to be investing your actual money in? What are the trading or, custody costs just for you doing nothing? Or for you trading, is there an additional cost for that? Then, look at what planning services you actually need, because you may not constantly need the same plan every year. You may not need this. For some people, and this is a secret, right? We're going to talk about the secret of wealth at this point, right? So we're going to go to Easy University. The secret of a lot of wealth comes down to something very, 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 very simple: patience, right? It just comes down to strict up and down, left, right, patience. You sitting back there and not doing anything with that money. You're not touching it. You're not trying to move it. You're not trying to beat the market. You're simply trying to be patient, let it work. A lot of the times what ends up messing people up is you feel like your inaction is somehow slowing you down. But not all movement is good movement. Not all movement is going to see you in the direction you want to go. Sometimes you're just doing it for the sake of doing it, and you end up wasting at least your energy and then time and money. A lot of wealth is simply built by doing the same thing and letting it go out and work. You want to increase your wealth, but you own property. Okay, the market will do it for you. What are you going to do? I'm going to go out and find the cheapest type of labor I can get to replace a roof, to redo this kitchen. I've done more damage into it than I actually increase the value of the house. can't chase some of these things. All you really have to do is say, well, one of the best things I can do for my money is to sit back and relax. One of the biggest drivers of your wealth is going to be your income. It's going to be that W-2 income that you may still have that you get to save and you keep most of it. It's not sexy. A lot of things we talk about here on this channel for Money Mondays, it's not sexy. It's boring. Okay? It's boring. But you want to start envisioning your money like this. There are several ways where you can make more money. That's usually the way we talk to people about, hey, you want more money, make more money. But the truth comes down to, it's what you keep at the end of the month, at the end of the year. So my salary says 190. I'm spending every bit of it. I can't get a raise. The last raise took me to 190 recently. Well, how can I increase the money? I can reduce my expenses. I can reduce the burn rate. I can look at some of these things and say, let me get rid of it. Therefore, it's almost like as if you gave yourself a raise. You've got more disposable income in your plate. You didn't actually need a raise. You needed to be smarter with your money. Yeah, not all movement is good movement. Yeah, the yeast rising, you're watching your roux, you're watching the stew marinate. Some of these things you can't rush. Some of the dopest things in life you can't rush. Time is one of those things that sits there and says, you pay attention to me, you do right by me, let me do right by you. Well, it was last year this time, male egos being what they are, you got one of these guys who came up to me and he's trying to clown me. He's trying to be cool, he's trying to be the guy. But what we don't have, the difference between us, I've got 10 years of work under my belt. 10 years. I'm just talking in a monetary sense, in a financial sense. I've got 10 years of doing what I need to do. You just showed up. And so one of the first things people like to, oh, I got a house in Pennsylvania, it's worth this. I'm just like, just by that statement alone, I know we're not in the same league. We're not under the same sun. Well, congratulations, man. And I try to keep it moving. And you try to clown me about something else. And you don't know me from anything else. Oh yeah, I got this in this car. Man, I'm so proud of you. Congratulations. And then you let that sit. And then what happens? Other people that know you tell that story. Because you went somewhere else trying to clown on Easy, say, oh yeah, because I was telling Easy this. They're like, he's got like 11 houses, right? And the look on his face is like, no, I can't be. They're like, yeah. He wrote a book too, right? What? It's 3 cars. What were you trying to clown him on? And now you look like, okay, you cannot defeat 10 years of work. You can have a good day. You can have a string of good days. 10 years of work is what it is. Is what it is. We come to this position where we are so comfortable looking and seeing what people have done and seeing the fruits of that labor and thinking that is due upon me. You can't see 10 years of work, especially 10 years in the past. You can't go back and secretly observe and say, damn, he was doing a lot of delayed gratification. I'm seeing some of his gratification now. I'm jealous of it. I want it for myself. So I can only pretend. I can only increase this activation energy and hold it for so long before the truth is revealed. I didn't do 10 years of work. A lot of those years is you being active. A lot of those years is you being quiet. You letting things actually get out there and work. Let the play develop. I used to say that when I used to play football. You got to let the play develop. You know where the ball's supposed to be going. You know where the hole is. Let it develop. Let it sit down and wait. You got the information. You got the knowledge. Sit down and wait. Let it happen. When you're looking at a real estate market and you say, I have the money I want to buy, understand what you're doing. Understand the trend in the market. Sometimes it's sitting on the sidelines and getting wiser about what's happening. A lot of us have to look at that when it comes down to basically retirement. You've got to look and you got to be patient. You got to say, okay, what is my money doing now? You do not want to wait to the last minute and try to be the guy that's showboating like I made it. What you want to do is be the person that did the years of work. And it looks like hard work. It looks like effort. What it ends up being is I was just patient. I did what I did. My money's going the right direction. And I just chill. And I let it work. And I let it work. And I let it work. A lot of us just need to get out of the way of our money and let it work. You hate going to work. Your money says, I want to work. I want to get out there. I want to go back out there. I want to move and shake. I want to climb the corporate ladder. I want to stab people in the back. I want to come back home with a bunch of floozies, and they're going to bring their friends that are floozies, but it's just more money in your pocket. And you're like, okay, let me get out your way. It's like, thank you. Right? And all that looks like is you investing in an ETF. All that looks like is you putting it in a retirement account. All that looks like is you letting that equity build on its own. All that is you not being afraid when the market turns, when you have a couple bad days, panicking, let me sell everything. Let it work. Again, unsexy solutions, right? Let's put that in a shirt, unsexy solutions. That's what a lot of it is. Again, guys, thank you for another Money Mondays. I hope I made some type of sense. Right? I hope I made some type of sense. You know, we don't want to keep you guys too late. Out too late. It is a school night and it is Monday. Who here loves Mondays? But again, we hope there's actual useful information. Thursdays, we're going to try to do an unlicensed, and then of course Sundays, subscriber Sundays. So hope to see you guys there. We're having some fun. If you have any ideas that you want us to cover, anything that you want us to talk about, you can hit my email, mrsochimaeze@gmail.com, or for those of you that actually know me in real life, you could just text me, just call me. We may try to do a video call for unlicensed on Thursdays. We're going to see if there's actually a need or desire for that, so we can have people come up and sort of talk. If you are willing to do that, hit me up. Right? Besides that, we do enjoy Money Mondays.